Hi everyone, I'm Inga Thordar and I am delighted to be here to chair this very important session on how we build a sustainable future. The price of not doing so will be high, and as we have seen from recent UN reports, the world is not right now on track to reach the goals we need to keep global warming under control. The consequences of that have also been made very clear, from loss of biodiversity to more unstable weather patterns, to name just a few. But our panelists today are hopeful and are going to discuss some new ideas, technologies, and developments that could and hopefully will help all of us build a more sustainable future. So without further ado, let me introduce you to the stellar cast that we have. Esteve Almirall is the Director of Center of Innovation Smart Cities at Esade Business School. Florence Verzelen is the Executive Vice President of Industry, Marketing and Sustainability at Dassault Systemes. Sandeep Nailwal is the co-founder of Polygon, which is leading Ethereum scaling and infrastructure platform. And last but not least is Dunham-Jones, is a professor and directs the MS in Urban Design at the Georgia Institute of Technology in Atlanta. She is also the host of the Redesigning Cities podcast. I am very much looking forward to this conversation, so thank you all for joining us. But maybe, Esteve, if I could come to you first. If you think back on the last 10 years or so, what do you think are the key developments and technologies that are enabling the development of smart cities? And perhaps crucially, will they be enough to make cities of the future truly sustainable?
First of all, hi everybody, and thank you for inviting me here. Well, we had many developments in the last 10 years. In terms of technologies, the smart city concept is very polyedric, has many sides. It's not a clear concept. But if we have to highlight one from the technical perspective, maybe we can highlight the point of digital infrastructures. We always had before some kind of sensors in the city and so on, but we didn't have a whole infrastructure that puts them together, that glues them in a single body. Digital infrastructure is something that is coming to age in these years, not only in the sense of the city as a whole thing, but also in the way that we communicate to citizens. We have a single login, single sign-ons, we have common process that all the process in the cities and in general in governments use and so on. So these two levels, at the city level for providing ideally communication from city to citizen one-to-one, and at city level having this digital infrastructure. This has been some new developments. There are many cases in cities. One of the cases, for example, that you can maybe highlight, or some of them, one is dynamic and real-time everything. Cities are being continuously governed by a dynamic and real-time process. And now one is the need for experimentation, for example, urban labs that we have in Barcelona or in many other places, because the future is not so well known. So you need to experiment and to check to what extent things work and so on. Also, city one-to-one interaction, the scope, global scope for communication to citizens, not at city level, but bigger than city level, for example, like you have in Guangzhou in China, and many other processes reflect this idea of digital infrastructures.
Now, having asked you to look back on the last 10 years, I'm going to ask you to look ahead now. I mean, staying with the sort of theme of cities, I mean, the way the cities operate, it feels almost impossible that they will ever be operating on net zero. Is that fair?
Well, sustainability is a big issue, and sustainability is one of the big issues that we had some time ago, and it's coming and it's going to be in the coming future. And sustainability has many sides. For example, healthy cities, livable cities, and so on. Together with that, we have assisted to many transformations: work from home, online shopping. All these transformations exist. What is coming in the future and what is already present is electric mobility. And probably we will have three things that we will see in the future that will change very much cities. The first one will be a revolution in mobility. sharing, self-driving. Nobody knows the exact date, and probably the exact date is not going to be the same for everybody. Depending on the city, you will have self-driving and sharing in one time or other. Another one will be AI and digital transformation that will allow this one-to-one communication that in some places exists, but not in many places, that will allow all these different infrastructures to work together. And the other one that is also coming is the redefinition of public space. Now, because we will have less cars and we will have more sharing, and we will have different priorities in terms of sustainability, mobility, the 15-minute city, and so on. We will have more space because we will have less shops because online shopping and so on. All this space will be redefined. And we'll have new uses and new ways that citizens can appropriate this new space. It's a devolution process, and how cities solve this devolution process is also part of the equation of this future that is coming.
Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about the world of online shopping and remote work. Ellen, if I could bring you in here, because you've spoken a lot about the disparity between sort of the inner cities and the suburbia, and the need to level the playing field between the sort of unaffordable city centers and the sort of disinvested areas of the suburbia. I mean, what kind of difference will the remote working and more sort of online shopping and people staying in their own areas mean? And how do we close this gap in cities?
I think it's a really fascinating opportunity that we have, because I think this tele-everything world, and I would include tele-education, telemedicine, it is, on the one hand, it has the potential to even that playing field and allow people in much more affordable areas who don't have access to all of this new technology and all of these things. It allows them to begin to participate in a much broader economy. On the other hand, it has the potential, all of these digital new tools have the potential to exacerbate the differences between rich and poor places and people. So the opportunity, I think, is for us to invest in improvements in both the technology and, as Esteve was saying, to retrofit public space in these bypassed places. Because I think we need robust digital infrastructure to really allow people in a lot of these places that, as we've seen in the pandemic, so many places fell further behind. And yet, the urban areas have all this, but it's really hard to get, it's not equitably distributed. So we need more of that technology. But we also need walkable, charming streets, a convenient mix of everyday uses, and really great parks that can connect us to each other and to nature, precisely because we're spending so much time online. And I think the two mirror each other. I mean, I know that early in the 90s, when the internet kind of first came around, there were a lot of, I was teaching at MIT, and a lot of my computer geeky friends were saying, we don't need cities anymore. I have more friends online than I possibly have in my neighborhood. And yet, what did we see during the 90s and into the 2000s? We saw the renaissance of cities. We saw much more growth of cities. We're still seeing plenty of suburban sprawl and development, but I think we need to recognize how the investments in a digital world need to be the more time we spend online, the more we crave also having great physical places, and we need that.
Now leveling that playing field is not going to come cheap, and where resources are at a premium. I mean, do you see that as the main challenge to reaching that goal that you talk about?
Absolutely. I think it's really, we need the public investment. So in the US, we passed an infrastructure bill where actually a significant amount of money is being spent into more areas that haven't seen that investment, going out into especially more rural areas, as well as a lot of suburban places. So that, I think, there's absolutely a role. These are going to have to be public-private partnerships. And I think a lot of the licensing of some of the technologies needs to be require that sort of universal access, which when we did electrification of the suburbs, of the rural areas back at the, a century ago, the public sector required that kind of participation. So.
Yeah, and you brought in the technology there, and I think that's a great point to bring in, Florence. Virtual twins and digitalization, can play a major role in the success of any smart city, and it's something that you've been working on extensively. Can you tell us a little bit more about this technology and how you think it can help, cities be more sustainable and more resilient?
Yes, of course. And hello, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with all of you. And let me begin perhaps by explaining what is the virtual twin of a city. Well, the virtual twin of a city is basically a digital multi-scale representation of a city that you can use to design, simulate scenarios, optimize everything virtually before implementing the only most sustainable option in your real city. So it can be used to optimize your transportation network, but also to make sure that the air flows bring clean air to the city. It can be added to have a dialogue with citizens on the expansion of the city by showing to them in advance how the city will look like so they can react. And it can also be used to make the city resilient. In the virtual world, you can create a virtual tsunami and do it on the city, and then you see what happens. So you can prepare your city for recovery. And I'm convinced virtual twin can have a significant impact to build sustainable cities and infrastructure. If we look at what city means today, well, they use 60% of the world electricity, 25% of the water, and they're responsible for 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emission. And we have made some studies with Accenture and Dassault Systemes, and we were able to show that by using virtual twin of a building, you can save up to 80% of the energy consumption with proven technology. So it's a massive weapon of sustainability. And this is the reason why a lot of cities are adopting virtual twin. The first virtual twin project we did was with Singapore in 2012, 10 years ago. And Singapore used the virtual twin exactly for that, to model the city, model the flow, optimize the transportation, optimize the temperature and the CO2 emission. And since that time, we have continued on doing with a lot of many other cities, like the city of Jaipur. And Jaipur is really using it to optimize as well all the transportation networks of the city and do it in the most sustainable way. So I think it's proven technology, it's working. And as you said at the beginning, well, we are in the decade to deliver for climate change, so we should use it.
It's interesting, you mentioned both Singapore and Jaipur, and China was mentioned earlier. I mean, is Asia further ahead in using technology to get to a more sustainable future? Florence, do you think that is accurate?
I think this is true. And for a very good reason. When you look at the Asian cities versus the European cities or the US city, they are expanding a lot. And they need to manage this expansion. If you look at Paris, we are basically staying with the same number of people within Paris. Like even people are leaving for the countryside anyway. But if you go into Chongqing, if you go into Beijing, if you're in Singapore, in Seoul, in Tokyo, the cities are expanding, and the quality of life for the citizen in the city is becoming a real topic, as well as the resilience of the city. And if you want to build the next district or adapt the current district for a more sustainable life, well, virtual twins are very powerful. And India, China, Japan, Korea were the first to adopt it or adopt it more widely because of their expansion in cities.
Yeah, that's interesting. But somehow we're going to have to pay for all of this. And, Sandeep, as we know, I mean, all of this will require a lot of work around finances. And I think many of us are still getting our head around the sort of decentralized financing that you're working in. Why is that important for a sustainable future?
I feel that, sustainability is not only about, like the climate change and, helping the climate, but it also about, distributing the opportunities and, in some form trying to achieve some level of equality across the world, right? And right now, how the financial systems are built across the world, although I come from Polygon is a general purpose blockchain. It serves all kinds of purposes, not only decentralized finance, but specifically on the decentralized finance context. I was speaking that if you see the global financial sectors or centers, they are, in few specific countries. And imagine, like, if you were somewhere in Africa and you wanted to participate in that financial system, which is, let's say, in Wall Street, New York, or maybe the London financial, ecosystem, you probably have very difficult, a lot of difficult things. Either you can't participate. If you are too small, you can't participate. Even if you are big, you can't really, it's very difficult to kind of get through all the hoops and participate in those ecosystems. Whereas, when decentralized finance is nothing but finance infrastructure built on top of blockchain, and blockchains being inherently global in nature, they provide that financial, kind of financial system, both its opportunity and rewards to everyone across the globe. Because to get onto that blockchain platform, you don't need a lot of like background work that a lot of bureaucracy, red tape that you have to go through in the traditional world. You don't have to go through that. You just need to create an address for yourself and have initial money to start over there, and then you can participate over there. So essentially, it's like blockchains or decentralized finance is nothing but global finance using blockchains going like hyper global. It's basically globalization ingrained in at the very core of it. And due to that, we believe that right now, compared to, let's say, the world having these wealth centers in specific areas in the world, when blockchains are there, and then the global businesses can participate from one place to another in each other's value creation, there will be some level of spreading of this concentrated wealth in some specific pockets in the world. So that's why, like, banking the unbanked is a very big war cry in the Web3 industry. How can we take this, these various different things in the financial system, money markets, insurances, exchange, all of those things to the unbanked, the last unbanked person. So that's where blockchains are, like, providing that DeFi, this new paradigm of decentralized finance, because here you can build a whole bank or a whole insurance company just by writing some code, and people can pool in money, and the people who need the money or need, let's say, loans, they can come and collateralize some things and then take out the loans and things like that. So you can actually, and the way it works is because it's only about writing the code. In the last, like, when we had the DeFi summer, we funnily called it, in 2020, 2021, probably the last 100 years of all the innovation in finance, be it like, credit default swaps, interest swaps, exchanges, money markets, derivatives, everything was replicated within a matter of 1 year in DeFi. Why? Because anybody across the world can simply write a code and have the composable features between, let's say, one feature. You have a lending borrowing system, connect it with an exchange. You have an insurance system connected with a lending borrowing system. All those kind of, financial engineering that you see in the traditional world has already been achieved over there. And the other part is, so that way, like, blockchains are trying to get or bring more equality across the world and get those opportunities across to the unbanked, or the next, let's say, next 4 billion, 5 billion people who are marginalized currently. But also, there have been previously doubts about, like, because Bitcoin blockchain being a proof of work blockchain, like, whether it's environmentally sustainable and all that. And Bitcoin is one blockchain which is proof of work. But apart from that, and Ethereum initially, because it started after Bitcoin, it was initially also proof of work. But I'm very happy to tell you that this end of this year, Ethereum is also going into the proof of stake mode, which does not need this much energy. Similarly, like the blockchains, Polygon blockchains, which are layer 2 blockchains on top of Ethereum, they're all proof of stake. They hardly consume any energy. And even then, even for that energy, like, because this was a, like in the traditional world, this was a bigger narrative that was being spread that blockchains are not sustainable and all that. And that is true for Bitcoin, although, but larger 99% of other blockchains are not that. And to kind of bring the whole, to fight this anti-narrative for the whole community, we are encouraging everyone in the blockchain and Web3 world to go carbon negative, or at least carbon neutral, right? And Polygon ourselves, we have committed like $20 million to, make Polygon carbon negative. And we are encouraging even the apps, protocols, everyone to, go more and more about the, around the environmental, sustainability, so that this blockchain field not only is environmentally sustainable, but the most environmentally sustainable technology. So that's where we are, these two parts of the sustainability, both, spreading the equality as well as climate and being environmentally positive, is where we are focused at. And I feel that the larger blockchain community is also moving towards that.
Well, that's really good news, because yes, the energy used for Bitcoins has definitely caused concern in the past. I just want to ask, because having the experts on inner cities and the technology all in one place, it feels like a really big treat. Ellen, I'm really curious to kind of everything that you've been saying about what's needed to be done in the suburbia. Do you think the technology that Florence talked about, the twinning, could be helpful and could actually save some resources? So you're not building something is not going to work. You're going to build something that has been tested out. Do you see that as a viable option through all your studies?
Absolutely. So I teach at Georgia Tech, an institute of technology, and I'm surrounded by, I have colleagues working on digital twins and working in high performance buildings. And we've actually been combining having the urban design students and the high performance building students collaborate and design, do a lot of energy modeling at the urban scale, as well as stormwater modeling, as well as connectivity, lots of things. And I think there are, I'm especially an advocate for is retrofitting our existing underperforming places. And sadly, I think so much of the last century, we have focused on how do we build some brand new place that is perfect and meets all of our, it's easier to build a brand new, totally solar renewable city than it is to retrofit an existing suburb. But to me, it's the much greater need is for us to take our underperforming places and figure out how to make them perform much better, and at the same time absolutely continue to attract a population and people who want to live healthier, more sustainable lives. And so
Florence, can I ask, transportation is a really big issue in cities. Does your the technology, the virtual twin and the digitalization, does that cover that as well as building and spaces?
Oh yes, definitely. Actually, it's a very important part of all the smart city project we do. And as of today, 90% of the electric cars in the world are done with our software solution. So it's a big topic for us as well. And you can really see it at different levels. Our software help develop electric cars, hydrogen bus, but they also help the system to work more sustainably. Meaning when you have the virtual twin of the car plus the virtual twin of the city, then you can also work on where you need to have the electric charging station, what kind of path do you need within the city in order to make the system of the city sustainable. And this is something very big because it's not just optimizing the car or optimizing the railway. It's about optimizing the system for sustainability, resilience, and quality of living.
Yeah. Esteve, I want to ask you a slightly different question about the kind of, you coming from the sort of academic world. I'm curious if you're seeing political will to kind of do all this work that needs to be done in these cities. You hear about great solutions here from Dassault Systemes and all the work that you've been doing and the work that Ellen's been doing. Is there a will to kind of go ahead with these projects?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the political view depends very much on the society because, well, in all this game, there is a co-evolution. The society and the technology co-evolves to a certain goal. So it's not just the plug-in technology and then something happens, but it's this kind of co-evolution. So it has different phases depending on the world. If you go to Asia, they believe very much in technology. So you will have tons of digital twins around and all this kind of stuff, trying to make the city as performant as they can and so on. If you go to Europe, to Paris, for example, you have the 15-minute city, the walkable city. If you go to Barcelona, you will have the super blocks and the green spaces. So this addresses very different visions of the city. And there is a will to tackle all these aspects. But this political will have different focus. Maybe one thing that we miss in the smart city space is points of encounter. We have one in Barcelona, Smart City Expo, but we don't have so many points of encounter of all these very different visions of what a city should be. And this is the part of the problem. You have these different visions. But yeah, definitely you have tons of political will and lots of money spent in different directions.
But that's money coming from the sort of old system that Sandeep was sort of talking about, and I'm sort of curious, Sandeep, when you listen to that. I mean, if there is political will and there is money and it's still moving quite slowly, I mean, how far away are we from the kind of the financing system that you talk about, the decentralized financing system, being able to, put up money for projects like this one? Is that anywhere in our near future?
Yeah, I think that, generally with the amount of money that is flowing into the blockchain and Web3 space, there have been a lot of institutions who have shown this kind of willingness, and not only institutions, I would say that the community. For example, many of you guys might have heard about the Crypto Relief Fund, which I started. And you might have heard that, the Ethereum Foundation or the Ethereum founder, Vitalik Buterin, actually donated $1 billion to it and things like that, right? So total, I mean, that fund was in a simple like meme coin at that point in time. But the community around it, around the meme coin, Shiba Inu community, was very excited that, okay, they are now not only being a meme community, they are now working for helping the Indian COVID relief efforts. And we were able to take out around $470 million for that. So, and this was like a purely organic campaign. Like I did not have to on day zero, go and register and, apply for tens of those non-government things. I created a multi-sig, address, basically a blockchain address. And I just tweeted about it. And then we received overall like $1.1 billion in grants and things like that for India crypto relief. And even though right now the markets are in a kind of correction mode and things like that, but I feel that the amount of money that is flowing in, there is a lot of propensity first amongst the, the founders of many of these institutions to donate a lot and do good for the world. And secondly, here you can actually organize community efforts where the community overall donates to do some specific things. And there have been precedents, especially for the relief efforts, like for example, Ukraine, during Ukraine war, a lot of relief was sent into, Ukraine in terms of money in the form of cryptocurrencies, right? And similarly, I told you about the India COVID relief efforts, Philippines Philippine and Vietnam COVID relief efforts. There was also a lot of donations were made from all across the world. And I think eventually, it will reach this place where people or the DeFi can fund a lot of these public goods thing. Actually, we also have a particular product which is very famous called Gitcoin, and Gitcoin is actually public goods funding, space only, where every I think every 3 months around 10 to $15 million are donated by the people towards the community or the public goods efforts. So I'm pretty sure that sooner or later we reach the place where what EL was saying, those kind of efforts could also be funded by DeFi and blockchain communities.
I just want to, I mean, you talk a lot about the sort of social equity part of the cryptocurrencies and what blockchain will bring. I mean, are you seeing beyond sort of relief efforts and stuff, are you seeing a lot of evidence of where it is leveling the playing field? And there, because you hear a lot about people who have made a lot of money out of cryptocurrencies, but you don't hear a lot about people who have been brought up, so the sort of social aspect of it. I mean, are you seeing that evidence of people actually at the lower end of the scale who need that help are actually getting it?
Okay, so absolutely, like, yeah, I mean, we see that happening all the time. Like, for example, you might have heard about this game called Axie Infinity, right? It was kind of a blockchain based game where you can breed the animals and you can make them fight and things like that. And that particular game became so popular. It is the concept is called play to earn, right? So basically you play and you earn some assets which other people might want to buy, and like, or the richer people might want to buy, and they don't want to put the efforts to build those things. So the Axie Infinity game became very popular, and then there was, like, for good 6-8 months there was a huge phenomena where everybody, even it's a auto rickshaw driver on the road, or like small street vendor and all that in Philippines and Vietnam, everybody was playing it, and many people made a lot of money. Many students could afford their education in college, bought bikes for their commute and things like that. So it has happened. It has been previously shown multiple times, because, as I said, blockchains are inherently global in nature. For example, Polygon is one of the largest blockchain communities globally, and we see, like, I think we have more than 70 countries, community from more than 70 countries. Many of them auto-organize small events to promote Polygon, and bring more and more applications that are building over there to Polygon. We do a lot of activities in Africa under our next $2 billion users efforts and things like that. So things are happening at a very good pace. I see something really amazing that I would tell you that in India, for example, India is known to be the global software factory, right? We have so many software engineers and all that. But if you see, like, if you were hiring in somewhere in San Francisco Bay Area, you would pay a fresher at least like $150,000 a year salary, a fresher. And whereas in India, you will find a 6-year, 7-year, 10-year experienced guy at $50,000, because they were getting paid in India and all that. But with crypto, what has happened is that the developer salaries have kept creeping up, because now you can pay directly via crypto to someone where you were hiring somewhere in, let's say, US or somewhere in the Western world. You can hire directly from India, and then it's the same thing, that the programming, if the quality is good, you can hire. So I have seen that those salaries of Indian developers, where even the students from colleges are asking $100,000 in salaries and things like that, which was unheard of in when I was in the engineering side. So these kind of things are also happening to, obviously, Vietnam, Philippines, the developers in Vietnam, Philippines, and also happening in Africa, especially Nigeria, for example, which has a vibrant startup ecosystem compared to like how we see Africa as in general, and it is doing pretty well. So that way, I see that there are multiple opportunities for blockchains and crypto to completely open up and make things globalized. Like, you don't hire from this country, you hire from 70 different countries, and that level of salaries, like many of the companies have even recently, like I think Coinbase recently announced that they are not going to differentiate salaries basis on where your base residence is, whether you are in US, whether you are in India, you are in Philippines or Africa. If you are at a particular position, you all get same salary band, and those kind of equalizations of salaries and all that is also happening, which will eventually trickle down to the masses. Yeah.
Okay, that's very thorough, and it's great to hear that you have so many examples of this. Now, I know we're kind of getting close on time, and I want to ask all of you for your one sort of optimistic sort of thought at the end of this. But I do think it's very important to address accountability here and who's going to be held accountable. And Florence, coming to you, and I know that Dassault Systems has set up a very ambitious sales team for sales target for 2025. Which should help your customers. I mean, first of all, are you on course to reach that target? I'm curious, because 2025, it doesn't feel like that far away. And what do you think what difference will it make in the sort of supply chain if you're sort of paying it forward in that way?
That's a super interesting question. Actually, as you said at the beginning, we are in the decade to deliver and the world is not on track. The purpose of Dassault Systems is sustainable innovation, making the world more sustainable through innovation. And therefore, with my CEO, Bernard Charles, last year we have taken this commitment that by 2025, meaning 2 years and a half from now, 2/3 of our sales will come from software solutions that will help our customers to be more sustainable. And well, I think we don't have the choice because we owe that to our children and to our grandchildren. Now, the question is, how do we make it happen? Well, first step we did is to include as a basis in all our software lifecycle assessment, meaning eco-design. Whenever you design a car, a cup of tea, or a bridge in our platform, you will know how much materials, how much CO2, how much energy you're going to use to manufacture it, and how much is going to be used during the life cycle of the asset. So you can optimize everything from a sustainability point of view. And as you perhaps already know, 80% of the CO2 impact and the waste impact is taken at the design phase. So it's a huge, huge impact. And of course, what is it going to trigger? Well, it means that our customer, and we have 300,000 of them, they are going to use different materials. They are going to optimize their supply chain, as you were saying, for circularity or sustainability. And another offer that we have developed is basically the virtual twin of the supply chain. If you're a construction company, we did, for example, a big partnership with Webit Construction. A lot of the CO2 emission comes from what you buy and how much CO2 is emitted on its way to where you're going to build. And if you optimize everything from a sustainability point of view, choosing your materials, also taking into account the CO2 emission of the supply chain and on the roads and the way to bring the materials to the place, well, you can have savings in terms of CO2 between 30 and 80%. So it's huge, but it means that it's going to help companies that have taken sustainability commitment, that have chosen supply chains that are sustainable. And for us, it's a good way forward. And that's the reason why we are doing it.
Okay, in a moment, I'm going to ask Esteve to kick us off on the sort of positive development that he's seeing. But just quickly, I'm going to put Ellen here on the spot as well and looking into the future. I mean, you live in Atlanta, which is one of the most sort of unequal cities in America. Do you think that you will see the kind of progress that you are talking about, you know, in the next 10, 15 years in a city like that?
We're absolutely seeing progress, and it's really interesting. It's happening on the one hand. I do a lot of work in a very low income neighborhoods out in the suburbs of Atlanta. I'm also helping. Microsoft is building a new campus for 90,000 employees in a minority neighborhood that's fairly low income in the city. And it just, we're seeing the public sector, the private sector wanting to diversify workforces. Investments are being made that are extremely promising. Will it get us to truly car-free neighborhoods that are with an electrified multimodal fleet that will be all locally generated power? You know, are we going to be there in 10 years? In a few places, I think we will absolutely have those demonstrations, but will the whole region be there? No, I'm not that optimistic.
Well, that was optimistic enough. And Esteve, I'm gonna come to you now. I mean, I want to end this sort of talk on a sort of a positive note, and I'm sort of keen to hear from you. I mean, what is the development or the technology or the idea that gets you out of bed in the morning thinking, yeah, we are on track to catch this? And if I could ask all of you just to give me 1 minute tops, and I'll start doing this afterwards so that we get there. Esteve, what gets you out of bed in the morning?
Yeah, well, in terms of the optimistic view, if you look at the main thing on the evolution of European cities, most of them go in the direction of Amsterdam, of the 15-minute city, of green and so on, which is just the opposite direction that we were just a few decades ago. And that's fascinating, and that is what people think, and that is what politicians, the people that vote these politicians, there are two developments that are very interesting. The first one is the virtual part of the world. All these social networks and so on put us in a virtual place, and then the pandemic accelerated all this very much. Now probably the metaverse is coming, and this will spin much higher, much faster, all these virtual worlds or all this virtuality that we have. This changes a lot. And of course, this is not going to be 1 year or 2 years, because this is a co-evolution. What meaning, what place will have this virtuality in our life and so on. And the second one is everything is becoming a service. And this changed a lot. A few decades ago, I had many records, first vinyls, then CDs, and God knows, I don't have any anymore. Well, just a few collections of real times, that's it. Same happened to books. Same is going to happen to so many things. And this means a more sustainable planet. And this means less things, and this means less cars, and this means a different world. These two elements, the element of the virtuality and the element of everything becoming a service in virtual worlds and in real worlds, plus the mentality of people that we have to conserve our planet and livable cities, healthy cities, innovative cities is probably the mantra, more than efficient cities to run more cars that it was before, is what is changing more.
Wonderful, thank you. Sandeep, your 1 minute starts now.
Yeah, so overall, yeah, I mean, I can only say from the, the blockchain side of things that, Web3, the core values of Web3 are, about sustainability, equality in the overall world, and, decentralization of power. And, we basically all of these, the basic values of Web3 fit directly into a sustainable future. Eventually, we all want to reach there. Of course, like the technology, like the proof of work and all that previously, had issues, but, the industry really worked hard for last 5 years. And now we have, extremely environmental friendly technologies like proof of stake, and we keep growing into that direction. And on the, on the green manifesto side, like, as I said that, as Polygon, we are rallying the whole community, whole industry, Web3 industry to become, carbon negative, in fact, not even carbon neutral, by even contributing not only from their technology, but all through their other efforts by retiring carbon credits and all that, reach there. Yeah.
Thank you, Sandeep. Florence, what's exciting you at the moment?
Well, what's exciting me is the power of virtual twin for sustainability. We did a study with Accenture that proves that using just 5 use cases in 5 industries, from construction to pharmaceutical to car industry, to high-tech, we could save between now and 2030 using virtual twin technologies the equivalent of 1 year emission of all the transportation industry. So I think it's just massive. We did another report with Digital Waste Purpose, and it proves that 42% of the solution of climate change is already found if we apply proven technology. So I think it's up to us to make it happen and make this world sustainable. And this is what excites me every morning, to make it happen for my children and my future grandchildren.
Excellent. Ellen, bring us home.
All right. I mean, I think it's just the integration of systems, especially in those underperforming places, which were designed at a time when we just transportation was optimized by one group of people, water by another, power by another, and none of it was really collaborating. And I think there's so much opportunities now to redesign and produce multifunctional infrastructure that integrates all of the systems that all of us have been talking about here this afternoon.
That's great. Thank you. This has been a wonderful conversation, and we've heard about some really exciting new developments in how smart cities are coming, in the cryptocurrencies, and how technology is really driving all that. But most importantly, and I hope I leave this on a hopeful note, and all our audiences is leaving positive here, is that you're hearing from people who are incredibly dedicated to a sustainable future and are working every day really hard to make that happen. So on that positive note, I want to thank this amazing panel. I have learned a lot today. Appreciate your work around this and your time here today. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.